Hello, everyone, and welcome to Director Watch, an Awards Watch podcast that attempts to get inside the minds of cinema's greatest auteurs, explore what drives them, and go on a few unrelated tangents along the way. I'm Ryan McQuade, the executive editor here at Awards Watch, and joining me as always is my co-host, Jay Ledbetter.
Oh, I can't believe we're doing it. We're doing the podcast. We're doing the podcast. First episode. Very excited. And I am excited to say that we are going to be discussing the films of the great Todd Haynes. And we will be starting the series with his film, Safe. Yeah. So excited to be here, Ryan. Can't believe this has come to be. I guess we need to introduce ourselves. What do we need to do here? What's the protocol? I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of listeners know me from the Awards Watch podcast as well as all the stuff on the website. But Jay, you're the relative newcomer, and even though you have written a review up on the website as of the time of recording here, was that for Extraction 2?
Yeah, I'm sure everybody listening read my review for Extraction 2, so they're pretty familiar with my work.
Yeah, they're the movie of the summer, right?
It's breaking records. I'm sure Netflix has claimed that.
I mean, they're going to send us the numbers.
Have watched us or watched that film.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to find out next week just how much money it would have theoretically made in theaters.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is a perfect time to kind of introduce yourself to the Awards Watch podcast audience out there, Jay. So who the hell are you?
Yeah, so I am Jay Ledbetter, and I have been podcasting with Ryan to one degree or another for what, 5 years? Longer than that?
About 5 years.
5 years?
6 years.
And I originally have been writing and podcasting about film for about a decade now, starting in college, where I started a little personal website. You could call it a certified blog, basically, called Raining Frogs Reviews, because I liked the film Magnolia.
I was going to say, it's got to be a Paul Thomas Anderson.
Which will connect to the film that we were talking about today.
Sure.
But from there, I got associated with the great website Film Inquiry, that they're still doing great work today. And eventually I started the Film Inquiry podcast, and then the Film Inquiry podcast eventually became a director-focused podcast where I would do we'd go over a director's filmography in 2 or 3, 4 episodes, something like that. We do multiple films an episode. And I asked Ryan at some point to come on our Quentin Tarantino series.
Yep.
And we talked for about 8 hours. And
not in a row. Don't say like it was like in a row.
I think it was 2 episodes that were like 8 hours long.
I think so. Maybe
and
we're
not doing that anymore. Maybe we split it into 3.
I think so.
But we were shortly after that. Ryan and I were approached separately and told, that was a really good podcast y'all did. Do y'all want to come over to In Session Film, where we have been now for up until recently for 5-ish years, doing what was referred to as the Extra Film Podcast. Mm-hmm. The Extra Film Podcast was originated as a way to talk about sort of lesser known independent films. And I just, in my brain, because this is where I end up going at all times, I said, can we do one independent film and then one classic review of a director and make series out of those? And so I always seem to come back to that idea. I'm fascinated by these directors, their arcs, their visions, their ideas, and Ryan went along that ride with me, discovering all of these new filmmakers that we have now come to love. And when Ryan wisely, appropriately made the decision that Awards Watch was going to be his most permanent place for film criticism, he humbly, I'm lucky that he even asked me to do it, but he asked me to come along, and he said, let's continue that, make it our exclusive focus, and make this podcast Director Watch, which is what you're listening to now. Yeah. And what I am so excited to start. I'm so excited for this journey, Ryan. I can't wait. This is fantastic.
Buddy, I'm so happy to have you here. I've been nervous about doing this just because it's our new home to do this. And I know all of our listeners out there will love Jay. If you've listened to any stuff of mine over the last 5 years, you've already probably had a taste of Jay in our conversations and
sorry
whatnot.
about that.
And but I felt that also too, the thing that I love talking about, as much as all these new releases and the award season and everything here at AwardsWatch, I felt that we were missing this component, which is to look back and do retrospectives and to talk about not just modern directors as they are having new films come out every year, because Todd Haynes has a new film coming out this year, May, December, that we will also review here on the show when that is released and when we're able to see it. But we also want to take a look back at directors that maybe our audience can watch alongside us and watch these films and learn from them and grow appreciation for not just the stuff that's new. Because I think in a lot of film criticism, at least over our time, the thing that was burning us out, Jay, was talking about 2 or 3 new releases a week. And that can be a lot.
And now I have an 11-month-old baby, which would make that impossible.
I can't believe he's already 11 months. It
is ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
Insane.
But now we are able, or I am able, to have more flexibility and do this show. And also I'm hoping to make appearances on the main AwardsWatch podcast as well. So certainly so much Jay you guys have got ahead of you. Get excited. Either
that or get worried. One of the two. But no, we are talking about Todd Haynes, Jay. We're talking about every one of his films, except I want to tell all our listeners out there, we're not talking about Poison, though we will probably give some thoughts about that here in a couple minutes. His music docs and the miniseries Mildred Pierce. We're kind of gonna do a bonus episode.
We're gonna do a bonus episode doing Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story, Velvet Underground, and
Mildred Pierce.
Mildred Pierce.
So we're gonna do these every week, and they will be, by the time you're listening to this, you know that it's going to be released every Thursday. And we're also going to have guests on that are members of the AwardsWatch team, who were also guests on our previous entity of this in the past. We're also going to have guests that are in and around the film world and friends of the show, or new for our listeners and everybody out there, admirers of these films, wanting to come and talk to them, to us alongside you guys and talking about these movies. But yeah, I'm really excited to do this. I'm super nervous just because it's brand new, and I hope you all really like it.
I'm loose. I'm feeling good.
Jay's really loose. I'm like, oh no, behind the scenes.
Good, man.
But also, before we get into it, just want to give a shout out to Eric Anderson, editor-in-chief here, who essentially said it was okay for us to do this. So he's the madman behind this. So if there's anyone to blame, it's Eric, obviously. And he was like, sure, have Jay come on. And
I had gotten to know Eric over the years outside of all of this. Truth be told, dear listener, I'm not an awards guy. So I am much more
irony
in the director's side of this endeavor than the awards, and you'll see some of that later in a segment that we have created for every episode of this podcast. But it's an interesting fit, and the one thing I will say is I love all the people over here. So it's going to be amazing. I mean, the contributors here at AwardsWatch are awesome. I've been on podcasts with many of them before, and I know that they are going to help make this into a great podcast. As whatever you think of us two as hosts, we're going to get elevated by all of the great guests that we're going to have. So look forward to that.
Look forward to them, because we'll just be the constant in the way of
this. Is one we're going to have guests on most episodes, folks. So if you don't like this one, give us another shot.
Yeah, just first couple of episodes, just want to get, just be us. And then probably I think about third or fourth episode is when we're going to have a guest on.
Yeah.
Now, it might be a guest you already know, and we already know who it is too, and we're really excited about it.
Maybe it's Todd Haynes himself.
Well, I mean, sure.
Probably not.
Probably not. He's
maybe
probably
we're trying to get in touch with his people.
Yeah, his people are calling our people. It's a long thread. Is it a long thread?
Weird. His agent keeps going to voicemail for me.
I don't know. I keep trying to talk to him on Blue Sky, but I don't have the code yet. You know what I mean? So
yeah, we're not big time enough for Blue Sky quite yet, but this podcast is going to get us there.
Yeah,
believe that.
We'll get our codes in the mail tomorrow for this.
Oh,
but yeah. Are you ready to do this? Are you ready to start talking about Todd Haynes?
Let's do it. I'm excited. Let's go.
Well, Jay, before we get into Safe and before we get into maybe even a little bit of discussion on his first film, I got to ask you why we chose, or tell the listeners why we chose Todd Haynes to begin with. And was this it wasn't necessarily our first choice, but we had a bunch of choices. He was definitely up at the top of the heap.
He's always in consideration.
We did also have our team here at AwardsWatch vote on who.
He didn't even win, but we picked him anyway.
No,
I don't think he did.
I thought he did, and that's why we. I think he did. Yeah, I think he did. But anyway, what makes Todd Haynes for you an interesting series to tackle first?
So there's so many angles to approach this from, right?
Well, you got a whole podcast to talk about.
If we had a half a brain, we'd be doing Christopher Nolan right now. But
I mean,
we've only got a third of a brain between both of us, and
that's true.
We wanted to, I think, define this podcast as one that will cover filmmakers that might not be the first choices on so many other podcasts, right? Yeah. We don't, maybe one day we will get to Christopher Nolan, or we have plans to cover a much bigger filmmaker than Todd Haynes after this at the moment, and that I imagine that will come to fruition. But I think we wanted to sort of establish our cinephile bona fides a little bit with a Todd Haynes series, and obviously there's the relevance of his newest film releasing this year, so he's kind of front of mind for a lot of film fans. And just in general, one of the things that I have always loved about our collaborations on these podcasts, as far as these director endeavors are concerned, is they're real opportunities for discovery. And I'll hands up, I'll say I have never seen, before this series, I had never seen a pre-21st century Todd Haynes film.
Oh boy.
So there is a lot of discovery to be had here, and I'm so excited to go on that journey, because he is such an important filmmaker, an influential filmmaker, a filmmaker with a point of view that has been pretty firmly established, and if not firmly established, explored and discussed. And that's what I'm so interested in here. You said it at the beginning of the podcast here, Ryan, and I believe this to be true. We are trying to get inside the minds of these people, figure out what drives them to make the kinds of films that they do.
Yep.
And sometimes you look at a filmmaker like Steven Soderbergh and you say, I have no idea why he does what he does. He's elusive. I don't understand it.
I always think of Steven Soderbergh with that photo where he's behind the camera and it looks like he's got like a bottle of vodka in his hand. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's how he makes his decisions.
That's what I think about when I think about Steven Soderbergh. Just a bottle of vodka.
And we love Steven Soderbergh.
Screw it. And we love it. I mean, we love him.
And there are definitely some threads to most of his films. But with Todd Haynes, I think it will be a little easier to kind of come up with a worldview. And although his films are very, that we'll talk about this film today, there are no easy answers to be had in many of his films.
No.
But I think by the end of it, my goal is to kind of have this idea of who Todd Haynes is as a person, and therefore who he is as an artist. And that I just think he is kind of a perfect person to talk about first. I don't know. People might be like, what are you talking about? You've established an audience of 12.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't think so. I think he has a big audience. Obviously, he works with one of the premier actresses of her generation, and Julianne Moore, and various
Yeah.
other. I think when I think of Todd Haynes, I think of experimental, very experimental, very bold, and in the vision that he has. Reminds me a lot of the reasons why a lot of people love the directors that came up alongside him. You know, you look at someone like PTA, or you look at Fincher. You know, you look at these directors that are probably bigger in terms of, like, you know, people talking about on the internet. But when Todd Haynes makes a movie, a lot of people are paying attention.
Yeah. Really, Haynes is a contemporary of Soderbergh. He came up right along. Sex Lives and Videotape gave him a runway to have a career. Yeah. And then the other guy, obviously, Tarantino, which I did some reading on this film, and a lot of people were talking about this film in relation to Pulp Fiction, if you can believe that. So I can't. It's interesting.
We'll talk about that. By the way, also for our listeners out there, Jay is if you haven't listened to us before, Jay loves to read books. He gets his books out. He's pulling it out right now. He's got like 3 of them. Got like 3 books.
I got 3 books.
Can you tell the listeners what books you're reading, Jay?
Yeah, so the books I'm reading, one is called The Cinema of Todd Haynes, All That Heaven Allows, which is most of these are collections. That's a collection of critical essays. I'm also reading Reframing Todd Haynes, Feminism's Indelible Mark. Again, another collection of essays. And Todd Haynes Interviews, which is just a collection of interviews with Todd Haynes. So plenty of reading being done. Ryan says I like reading. That is not true. I just like to be thorough when it comes to studying these filmmakers. And now that we have this podcast, I'm planning on that being doubly true. I'm going to try and make sure that I have as much background as I can have, because I feel like there's somewhat of a, not responsibility is the wrong word, but I just don't want to sound like an idiot. Really is what it is.
Well, if not, then I mean, like Eric and I would just tell you that. You know what I mean? That's how it works. But we tell you that in confidence. The listeners aren't going to hear that.
God, eventually Eric's going to be on this podcast. That's going to be a disaster.
That is very true. He will be on the podcast at some time soon. We have him penciled in. That is for sure. But no, I really like his films. But you know, the thing about Haynes for me is he's always somebody I wanted to do a dive like this. You know, where we go one by one through his filmography, because, you know, the movies in like the 2000s, like Far From Heaven and I'm Not There, those movies were really big when they hit, at least, you know, culturally speaking and critically. But I was like in middle school, or I was like, I was younger, so I didn't really catch them at the time. And then, you know, a movie like Carol is a movie that's coming out when I'm in college, and I really like it. But, you know, I'm like, man, I really want to go back and watch his movies, and I just don't have the time. And so I feel like also this is, like you mentioned, discovery. It's also, even though I've seen some of these films, it's a rediscovery. I think that what you'll learn here, Jay, and our listeners will learn here too, is that, you know, just because you saw a movie maybe 5-10 years ago does not mean that opinion is going to stay that way. You know, it's the evolution of yourself, you know? Yeah.
With I'm Not There, for me, that's about 15 years ago. And as we were getting ready to record this podcast, you said, you're going to have to rewatch that one because your current rating is wrong.
It is wrong.
So I gotta rewatch that one, and I'm excited to do so. It's so different to when you're kind of discovering your love of film, and you can have kind of this weird perspective on things, and occasionally, and I don't know, maybe I still won't adore that film. I don't know, but there are times where you're like, oh, this is too so-and-so or such and such. And it's really nice to kind of reground yourself as a full-on adult with no desire to be seen one way or another by others, and just give your truest opinions on films. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be honest, Ryan.
We are going to be as honest as we can, and we're going to be as thorough as we possibly can. So Before Jay, we get into Safe. Todd Haynes made one film before
Todd
that.
Haynes. Yeah.
It was a movie
Well, he
called
made one feature before
yeah,
that, of
one
course.
feature.
Yeah.
He made a ton of shorts.
Well, look, Ryan, let me get into Todd Haynes' background. What do you
Well,
think
here
I'm
you
doing
go.
here?
You know what? You're the one reading the books.
I'm reading all this
You know what? Just take
stuff.
I'm gonna go sit over here. I'll be right back. You just keep talking.
And I will say not a ton of personal background that I've, at least from the stuff that I've read, really. He's
We can
a
ask him when he's on the
California
show.
guy. He was born and raised in the greater LA area, and he was a film fan from a fairly early age. He was making movies in high school, and then he went on to study art and semiotics, which I think, as I read that, maybe there's a lot of other directors who have studied semiotics, but I was just thinking, what a great subject for a filmmaker to study. Like the idea of cause and effect and all that stuff. I think is a super great way for somebody to really kind of establish their artistic worldview. And that was at Brown University. He made a few student films, nothing really broke through. And then his short film, Superstar, the Karen Carpenter Story. And let me tell you this, Ryan. Greta Gerwig, eat your heart out. Todd Haynes made the first Barbie movie with Karen Carpenter, Superstar, the Karen Carpenter Story. This is a movie where all of the quote unquote actors are Barbie dolls. And it is the life story of Karen Carpenter. And it is a movie that we are going to discuss later. Like Ryan said earlier, it is a movie that is very hard to see because despite the fact that he made a film about Karen Carpenter, he never got the rights to her music. So almost everything you'll see is bootleg at this point, but we will figure it out. Believe that. And shortly after that, he made his first feature film, which is a film called Poison, Ryan, which I know you have seen and I watched, and I would love to talk about because I really did enjoy the film. But the film cost less than $250,000 and got rave reviews at Sundance. I think it won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance and has gone on to be considered a pretty seminal film in gay cinema, featuring 3 interwoven short films about otherness, is kind of how I would describe the film, including a pretty straightforward AIDS allegory. But Ryan, I'm wondering what you thought about that one.
Yeah, I think that one, I've just for our listeners at the time of recording, I've already gone through all this film, so it was interesting to watch Poison as I guess the capper, almost the capper. No, I rewatched Dark Water after it, I guess. So it was interesting watching the first film in his filmography in the because May December is not released yet and I haven't seen it. So the latest film, at least that I can obtain, in Dark Waters at the same time. So I thought it was, really experimental. You could see a lot of promise, but Jay, you know what I'm going to say. This is a phrase that Jay and I say a lot when it comes to first-time directors, which is maybe it wasn't for me, but I can't wait to see what they do next.
See, I liked it more than that. I liked it more than that.
But like, again, I see the flourishes of what you're going to see in a movie like this, or definitely Velvet Goldmine. That's like a a movie like that, or even some of the cutting that you'll find, and like I'm Not There, and flourishes throughout his filmography. I think obviously can pinpoint from the beginning, right? Then that this is going to be a very special talent. But yeah, just overall, it was I thought it didn't connect with me nearly as much as it other first time films from filmmakers that we've covered in the past, or it wasn't my favorite debut, and it definitely was not as nearly as I think as good as the film that we're here to talk about today, which is Safe.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this film was pretty impressive, especially for a first time film. I mean, it is very much what you say, Ryan, which we'll say many, many times, I'm sure, over the course of this podcast. It was a very promising debut that made you excited for what they were going to do next. And it's a really interesting film that has 3 short stories that are very different genres and told in very different ways, but they do kind of congeal to a unified theme which is, I think, that theme of otherness. And there's a horror story about this sexual elixir that results in a fast-spreading form of leprosy.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound perhaps like an AIDS allegory in 1991? I don't know. You tell me. There's also a mockumentary about a boy who kills his abusive father, and they go deep into the background of that boy and kind of his interesting, unique personality. And then there is a story, a very abstract story. Really what this final segment reminded me of was a film that I adore, and I a little while ago got Ryan to watch, and he ended up adoring as well. I got a little bit of Mishima vibes from this story of these two men in prison who fall in love. It's told in this very experimental way that I found to be so expressionistic and really imbued so much without needing to tell you everything. And every segment of Poison is worthwhile, and it does help build to this unified thesis, and it shines a light on a group that was at the front of the cultural mind at the time of this AIDS epidemic, but the culture wanted so badly to ignore. And Todd Haynes, in some of the interviews I read, was so clear about this idea that there have been a lot of films with the subject matter of homosexuality, but he didn't think they were told in a what he called a homosexual way, which was this very transgressive, subversive structure, which he was trying to bring to this. He said he was like Cruising, for example, was a film that is about gay culture, but is told in a very straight, structured, conformative way, which is what he said. I mean, whether you agree with that or not, but he said, I wanted to come at this film from an entirely different point of view. And I think you feel that unique approach here. And it's not an all the way great film, I wouldn't say by any stretch, but it really does feel like a bit of a turnkey, given what I know about Haynes, for what would come after. So I would say definitely check it out if you're interested in Todd Haynes. And it's one of those, we have this often, Ryan, as well, where we'll be going all through a director's filmography and it hits us a little harder because it is in the middle of this deep exploration of one filmmaker. And I think this is that as sort of a launching pad.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's not a movie I don't dislike or anything. It's just, it's not as high up on the up there as the other films that we'll probably talk about and whatnot for me.
Not sure it's quite has the cultural footprint of Carol.
Probably not, and probably most of our listeners have not seen Poison nearly as much, but it is definitely a movie that is
would have been a bad idea to have Poison be the first episode of this podcast.
Yeah, I think Safe
not is that Safe is
between the two, it's the safer choice.
Yeah, I did say to Ryan, I said, do we just start with Citizen Kane? Do we just do Orson Welles and start with Citizen Kane and lock people in? But no, we went with Safe.
Do we do Mike Nichols and just start with Virginia Woolf? But no, I think that it again, it's a movie for me that you see all of the flourishes that are going to come, or as we're watching these films, Jay, of the movies that we may like more, or that he, then matured as a director, was able to tap in more specifically, especially, like I think of all these vignettes, like, and I think there's one that's in, correct me if I'm wrong, in black and white, and reminded me a lot of like a movie, like when you start watching, I don't know if you watched it yet, but Wonderstruck, that it will talk about. And it's also, and even like segments of like, I mean, I'm Not There doesn't, like the framing device of I'm Not There doesn't exist without Poison. You know what I mean? It because that movie is 6 stories. No, I see your 3 stories and I'm going to raise you 6 stories at that point for a movie, for that movie, So I'll
tell you what it made me think about was, and this is going to completely tank my credibility, but
here we go.
Eraserhead. I thought about Eraserhead.
You thought about Eraserhead a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
Certainly
I feel like
in the segment with the elixir.
Well, I can tell you this
where there
as
was the body horror.
Yeah, I can tell you this when we were talking about Safe today. I was getting Lynch vibes when we were watching Safe.
Oh, I totally was too,
Yeah,
especially in kind of the opening shot
yeah.
and a lot of the score. Even my wife, who will come up periodically on this podcast, she said she's not a film fanatic by any stretch, but she loves Twin Peaks. And
Mm.
at one point she was watching and she said, this is giving me real Twin Peaks vibes,
Man, I feel
which
like
I don't disagree with. I can totally see that. And especially the score, she said, this sounds a lot like,
yeah,
she didn't know Badalamenti by name, but she said, I think this sounds a lot like Twin Peaks, especially in kind of the setting of this film, which is
yeah.
very much similar to a lot of Lynch's work.
Yes, I do agree. And then I also was thinking like an all fruit diet. That sounds like something David Lynch would make his characters do, like just very random things that he will do in
Very
his shows.
affected
But
dialogue.
yeah,
And yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting.
But anyway, that's Poison.
That's
Moves
Poison.
over to Safe just a couple of years later.
Yeah.
And that is finally the movie we're here. Poison was in 1991. 4 years later, he makes Safe, which is written and directed by him and stars, of course, Julianne Moore. And the movie is set in 1987, and it follows
Period piece.
a suburban housewife in Los Angeles whose life is abruptly changed when she becomes sick with a mysterious illness caused by the environment around her.
Yeah, environmental illness.
Yeah. Jay, uh, movies on the Criterion Collection. You can get it right now if you're listening during
I have the Blu-ray. Amazon sent it to me. It was cracked. I didn't realize it until I opened it.
Oh no.
So I'm stuck with it now.
Wait.
Not the disc, but the case.
Well, you can send it back. I mean, and get a new one. What's wrong with that?
I don't know. I probably can. It might have been too long now.
Well, anyway, set aside those feelings for a little bit here.
I will try desperately to not let that shade my opinion of the film.
Exactly, because I need to know what your thoughts on Safe are, because this is the first time you've ever seen this film.
It is.
And it's the first time I've ever seen this film. And I feel like we're going to have a really good discussion here. So what are your thoughts on Safe?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the only thing I knew about this film was its most famous image, which is the guy in the suit in the middle of the field. And so my idea, on the poster, it's not the cover of the Criterion, but it's the poster. It's kind of
it's on Wikipedia,
the indelible image of the film in many ways, despite the fact that it occupies about 15 seconds of the film.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like 10 seconds of this movie.
But you can think about it as sort of a metaphor for the entirety of the film. I mean, that totally makes sense as sort of one image that defines what the film is trying to say. I totally understand that. And it's also just a great piece of imagery. It's creepy and it does capture the eeriness that this film is all about over the course of the film. And it's a film that Todd Haynes had a tough job financing. A lot of studio executives were very excited by Poison. They said, do something like that again. And then he would say, I have this film, which is very different. And they said, no, thank you. And then eventually he got the financing and he made this film Safe, which I thought was fantastic. I really, on this first watch, I had a wonderful time with it. And it does feel very much of this independent film boom of the early to mid 90s. And I'll tell you what it really made me think of, and this is weird, and it's not always the best thing to compare movies to other movies, but
we're not going to try to do that a lot, but
but this is
imagery that gets called back.
This film reminded me of two movies, and it's sort of the antithesis of these movies in some ways. But the movies that I thought of were They Live and Fight Club, if you can believe that.
Interesting.
Does that track at all when I say that to you?
Sure.
I'll take that as a no. So,
well, there was a movie I thought of, but I was thinking of that movie. I was like, oh, that movie completely just ripped this one off. Remember the movie
that's
that?
interesting. Which one was that?
You remember that movie Swallow that came out a couple of years ago
Oh
during the
yeah,
pandemic?
yeah. Oh, that's
And
actually that's interesting.
that
Yeah,
movie
I don't
like
disagree
pretty.
with
That
that.
movie pretty much just like rips this off almost, if
In
not
some ways, for sure.
some
But
ways. A lot of aesthetically speaking, at least.
so the They Live in Fight Club comparisons, I'll kind of start at where those come from, and then how this movie kind of flips those films on their heads.
Okay.
Obviously, Fight Club came out after this, so it
I
wasn't.
don't know if we're supposed to talk about that, by the way.
Oh, true. Hold on. Let me look at the rules real quick. Ooh, turns out that's the first and second rule. So,
Well, I
not
mean,
supposed to, but is that a double negative where we can now talk about it?
true. I think if we just tread lightly with it, I think we'll be okay.
Okay, so Fight Club is a film that is all about sort of, and you could kind of compare it to The Matrix a little bit too.
Yeah. Yes,
The Matrix, and They Live in Fight Club are all these films about people discovering reality and how the world around them is all fake, and how their love of consumerism is actually breaking them from the inside out, and they are being controlled by external forces that are actively working against them. And this film, in many ways, is talking about similar things, but it's approaching it from a very different angle. And it is approaching it from an angle not of aggression, but of helplessness. And you have Julianne Moore in this film, who maybe this has come across your mind as I was talking about those other films. Those films star men. And this is a film that very much stars a woman, and very purposefully stars a woman, because Julianne Moore's character Carol is someone who feels as though she cannot overcome her circumstances, and she cannot seem to identify what is causing her ailment, what is called environmental illness, what at one point is referred to as an allergy to the 20th century. So what does that immediately make you think of? It makes you think of materialism. It makes you think of the artifice of somewhere like Los Angeles, where I have some great Todd Haynes quotes that I might bust out later about his thoughts on Los Angeles, which he calls basically it feels like you're at an airport at all times, essentially, is kind of what he said. And there is the wonderful,
really great comparison.
There's the wonderful opening shot of the film where you see from the passenger seat of a car, where you see these kind of monolithic houses that get bigger and bigger as you approach what ends up being their house. And there was one great quote from Haynes where an interviewer asked him, "So what movies did you watch to prepare yourself to make Safe?" And he said 2001, which I thought was very interesting and also appropriate. Especially, I referred to the monolithic structures. That is very much a part of this film, and it is all about humanity's penchant for working against themselves. You think about, in 2001, it is this idea that the creation of tools eventually leads to humanity's downfall, and this idea of progress is actually a net negative to the existence of humanity. And in this film, it's very much the search for what is commonly referred to as a better life is actually not what you should be striving for, and is, again, humanity's natural state is, in this film, allergic to that sort of cultural identity and cultural ideal. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on in this film. I've been talking for a long time now, but it's a fascinating film with a whole lot on its mind. Julianne Moore, who I go back and forth on her performance in Magnolia as, is it great or is it horrible? It's one of the most, is it full on bad overacting or is it great overacting? And in this film, she is the exact opposite. She is so understated. She is so muted, but it really does capture this very epic sense of dread and longing that is really the driving force of the film. She's in almost every shot of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
She is at the forefront entirely, when to this point she had not been that in a feature film by any stretch. And this really catapults her to the stardom that she would later find. So she's phenomenal. This movie is fantastic. Great start to our Todd Haynes series.
Yeah, I agree with everything. So we can just end the episode.
All right.
And then there you go. That was a good one. Good job,
step.
everybody. Take it off. No, I agree with everything you're saying there, Jay. I mean, this is he literally took off his headset. I hadn't seen this movie, and for the longest time I was kind of putting it off because I just knew the kind of movie that it is, which is it's a very uneasy movie. It's a psychological drama. I would definitely say it is a horror movie even at times, but there's also just this
Todd Haynes agrees with you.
Deep elegance to the movie too that I find very poetic, especially by the end. Like that ending, the last I think 10 minutes of this movie are absolutely perfect, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here. But I was really blown away in looking at this. I mean, obviously Haynes' message is I think very clear, as you're mentioning it and really talking about conformity and really the body essentially through this environmental illness is essentially breaking away of the norms of the 20th century to go into the 21st century. It almost feels like, and this movie is without a doubt, because Todd Haynes has said so, and then it's very clear in the film. This is a massive AIDS allegory throughout the film too, and you can look at Carol's illness as that
not as overtly as poison.
No, not as overtly as poison, but it's definitely there. I mean, you're talking about an illness that doctors can't, that are trying to treat but can't see, and
and we should say we have not mentioned Todd Haynes, a gay man himself.
Yes.
Publicly, and obviously that is a huge part of his filmography.
Yes. But so I thought that was, as subtext, but also invited in the film and within the I think this movie is in two parts. One, when she's at home, and also when she's at this retreat kind of commune society. Right, Jay? That's when the film really kind of breaks itself apart. And I think the first half is that horror film, the body breaking apart, the mind really breaking apart. I think of that really great scene where she is the car in front of her backs up with the exhaust the fumes, and she gets into the parking garage there where I think where they live, right? And the way the camera's just whooshing around as she's driving uncontrollably, and if you didn't know that what she was going through then, you definitely knew there, and you knew also that Todd Haynes' direction was not messing around at that point in the movie, and that's about 15-20 minutes in. I think that Julianne Moore's performance is a perfect performance. She's so you talk about like a movie like Magnolia, which is really funny because I wanted to tweet out, or I think I sent this to Eric or somebody. I was like, I put the meme of I have sickness all around me from her Magnolia speech, and I put safe in parentheses 1995. It was like that was the first thing I thought about. But it was really like it takes that monologue to like a very heightened degree, but also this movie is not like Magnolia where everything feels like it. That movie's at an 11 at all times. Like
this is at a 3.
This movie's at a 3, and it's a very comfortable, steady, mature 3, and
yet it's scary.
Yeah, I mean it's completely terrifying. And I was reading about how she told him she knew how to play this character. She knew how she was going to do it. She just kind of comes in here, and I've, seen some other, I mean, obviously I've seen a lot of her performances. We're going to talk about Far From Heaven in a couple weeks.
And is that the only other Haynes film she's been in?
No, she's in I'm Not There. She's in Wonderstruck.
She's in I'm Not There.
She's
she's
in
in Wonderstruck. I know next to nothing about Wonderstruck. So I'm Not There though. You're right.
She's in May, December, coming out later this year too. So she's worked a lot.
That's as close. Yeah. That's the closest he has to like a muse, I guess.
Yeah, that's his muse. Yeah, that's somebody he's worked with. He's also worked with Bale a couple times, but primarily, it's Julianne Moore and Todd Haynes. But anyway, just how she is able to capture, I think you can feel as if Carol is completely not within control of herself, but it's all still bottled in. I think of that scene at the birthday party, and how it is, how it juxtaposes later to the other birthday party that you see towards the end of the film, and how much more free and open she is, and yet still.
Is it a birthday party or a baby shower?
Well, it's like a baby I guess that's a baby shower, but that one, yeah, I guess so. But then the one at the end's a birthday party. But anyway, I felt like to see those parallels just within the film itself, to see literally almost a celebration, right? And see the character be completely disarmed and out of control. And then on the other end, she is more comfortable within her skin, but yet there's so much more, just as much uncertainty as she was before about where she's going to go forward. And I think that Haynes' script here is really great. I mean, there's so many haunting images, but then there's also just, bits of dialogue. I think of the way he places the camera above her as she's talking about returning that couch, and
there's so many great wide shots.
It all zooms and pans in. A lot of
way to block this film.
A lot of panning in.
Slow pans. Also, those really slow crash zooms. It's like the shot from Jaws, but slowed down by 1,000. It's a gorgeously shot film. Which, do you know anything about the cinematographer who did? I was looking about him. His name is Alex Nepomniaschy. I apologize if I mispronounced your name, sir, but what happened to this guy? He he shot Never Been Kissed.
Okay.
And he shot a Gilmore Girls movie, like a TV Gilmore Girls movie, which sounds great.
Really?
Yes. I've got nothing.
Poltergeist 3, Jay?
Poltergeist 3. About 7 or 8 years before this film. But I really do think this is a pretty visually stunning film, which this is the ultimate auteur question, right? Mm-hmm. Who is really responsible for these stunning images? Is it really Todd Haynes just using Alex Nepomniaschy as a tool to capture what he sees in his mind? You think about somebody like Paul Thomas Anderson, for example, where his whole career, a lot of people have said, oh, he's really the cinematographer. And then he does Phantom Thread and he's the credited cinematographer. And so it's a really interesting thing to think about as you watch films like this, where you have somebody whose films are always feel so personal and who have these visions that feel relatively consistent, and then an aesthetic that feels relatively consistent. You have to take into account this idea that maybe it's Haynes that is the true driver of the potent visuals in this film. And they are potent visuals. You have these incredible wide shots. I think about Julianne Moore gardening in the front yard. I think about Julianne Moore on the telephone with her mom in their foyer, where it's very non-traditional. This is not the way that intuitively you would think to compose these scenes. Mm-hmm. But I think what it establishes is, again, Julianne Moore is almost in every shot of this film. Yeah. It's interesting that Haynes is not putting her at the center of every shot of this film. It feels like she is maybe to the side, where the environment is really the thing that is driving the story, and she is subjected to this environment. In that scene where she's talking to her mom, what is at the forefront of the scene? It's this immaculate foyer that has been constructed, and it feels so artificial and so manufactured. And that, as much as anything, they call it environmental illness. But to me, for most of the film, it feels like she is at odds with the culture surrounding her. And I think that is supposed to be largely the allegory that we're dealing with here. And then there is Todd Haynes putting down this new age philosophy, this retreat at the end of the film, which is something that I'm sure we're going to get to. But it's a film that is attacking so much of contemporary society, not in an immature way, but certainly I would say, I think this is a pretty cynical movie.
I agree. I think that this is a movie, Jay, that, like you're saying, it is attacking societal norms in saying that,
or at least new societal shifts.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that it's attacking the shifts. I'd say that
I think it's attacking the new age.
Oh, you think it's
philosophy? What do you think of the retreat at the end? Let's talk about that. I think he is very much. I think he views the retreat as kind of an extension of her illness, whereas what they are proposing on its face is something that will cure her illness, but in reality only extends the real ills of the culture that she is living in. It's a false religion. I mean, it has entirely cultish vibes to it the entire time.
Yeah, very much one of those, just like, one of those, come out here and timeshare kind of things where, come out here and
that is spend really a weekend
spend a weekend with us and lose all your savings in the process of it. And we can guarantee the fix, right? It's kind of, it's almost the inverse of.
But here's the thing about it. It wouldn't exist if these people will all get better.
Exactly. But also too, is there potentially really anything wrong with them? Like that's the other thing.
Well, the movie kind of offers no answers in that regard. And it's so interesting that almost every afflicted person at that retreat is a woman, and presumably a housewife in many ways, a homemaker. And that is not an accident. And it is so interesting to see this filmmaker, and Todd Haynes has become affiliated largely with kind of these feminist movements. And
for sure.
You see the origins of that in this film. I mean, just centering this film around a woman is surprising for a film made in 1995.
But I think the movie's an ink blot in that great way, because I think of it as, and maybe this is my interpretation, maybe I'm thinking of it wrong, maybe you're thinking of it wrong, maybe we're supposed to be right, which I think is kind of great. But I see it as her body or her mind is reacting to what society deems to be normal. Buy the couch, be the housewife, laugh at the joke that the boss says at the dinner. You know what I mean? Go to this thing and that thing, and watching
this idea of perfection. There's that wonderful line
exactly
where they're doing the dance aerobics, and they're all in the locker room afterwards, and they say, "Oh, Carol, you never sweat," and she just says, "I know." And that is this idea of her. She has in many ways attained the perfection that she has always envisioned, but that is poisonous to her body. And that is what ends up harming her in the ways that we see in this film. But when she goes to the retreat, she gets worse. Worse. And
but isn't it always true that you're going to get worse before you get better, though? Isn't that like sometimes the case?
Are you think that's what the film is saying with that? Because I think what
I'm just saying that in some cases
I can see why she would convince herself that she was getting better at this place despite the fact that she is very obviously getting worse. And I think the reason she's getting worse in the allegory of this movie is that this new age philosophy is so focused on the individual. It's all about loving yourself. It's all about focusing on yourself. And as she does that more and more on this retreat, and it's all about her experiences and what she is going through, that you see her deteriorate more and more. Julianne Moore has never looked worse than she does in this film on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she has these bruises and these kind of scabs on her body. And the only way that I don't know if it is a coping mechanism or if she has fully gone off the deep end to one extent or another at the end of this film when she looks in the mirror and says, I love you, I love you, I love you. Is that her trying to convince herself that she does love herself? Or is that her truly breaking to the point where she has become completely brainwashed to this reality? Because if it didn't work in her old life, and now she sees that everything is not that different in this new world, in this retreat, in this place that promised that she would get better, then maybe this is her reality and she just needs to accept it and acknowledge that this is who she is and trick herself into thinking that she loves it.
See, I think you're not wrong there. But then I also, for me at least, when I was watching it, I agree with your points. It's almost as if she's come to this place to be fixed, right? To be able to go home, to be able to live a normal life. But yet, as we see throughout it, she's still holding the air, right? The gas mask and taking it with her everywhere. But yet also too, she is opening herself up to those people there. And there is a little bit of a dependency, I believe, on those people. So it's a double-edged sword of like, I think that by the end,
but it's a planned dependency.
It is. It is built into and it's short term
experience.
It's short term because they're going home literally the next day. So when she utters that line at the end, which is like, I love you, I love you, she's having to convince herself, because if she did have any comfortability at this place, she knows really what she's going to get back herself into. And she is then on that last night, she's not next to anyone. She's alone again. And she's almost testing. I see it as a test to see,
I like that,
where she is at and if she can handle it. And if she can't, then, I mean, obviously going forward, what does that mean for her? Did it work? What didn't work? And I think that Haynes doesn't give us any of those answers because it's not easy to kind of explain the situation. Because again, I think everybody's different, but also I think that, you can see it in multiple ways. Is that like, she clearly can't control it and it's gotten worse, but then it's gotten better. I mean, like, I think that those final scenes there where she's with everyone, she's trying to do that speech and it's very heartbreaking. Julianne Moore's incredible.
Oh, that scene is so awkward.
It's so awkward, but it's also, like the group sees her and they do accept her, even though that she's been quiet and she's gone through, the talking and everything. And yes, it is a very, I mean, Peter Friedman's character is very much it feels very snake oil salesman, but you're so invested I was at least very invested in Carol's story, where I was like, God, I hope that she can take something good out of what clearly seems to be, a cash grab or just a guy who likes to hear himself talk.
She has that line, I used to hate myself. And you feel like that entire speech is just some way of her trying to convince herself that she doesn't hate herself anymore. And it's tragic. It's really, really sad. And you have these people around her who have fully bought into this, like you said, snake oil experience. And they just, root her on because they're like, yes, this is what happens. We all love it here. And we love Peter. And
I think they buy into it.
Living in our igloos.
Well, they buy into it because the harsh reality is that they don't have a place like this then, Jay. You know what I mean? This is all really they have. And it's really sad when you think about it. Because then otherwise it's back to the life of that they had before. And in that sense too, it's lonely and dangerous and uncertain. And at least they know that with this, in this group, there's at least a little bit of chance to grow from, because I think of that scene where they're the woman's husband passes away and she's just kind of given up. She just is right there, Jay. And she's like, I'm, like, none of this matters. none of it really matters because the person that I lost, that I connected with the most, is gone. And yet you hear all these other people around that circle still attempting to try to connect with one another, right? It's a movie that is in a lot of ways also too about the fact that, at least through the allegories, talking about the AIDS crisis, in the 80s and 90s and everything, the fact that the LGBTQ community, going back to a sense of normalcy, if you look at it through that lens and you look at it through that whole storyline and structure, it's very much of the sense of like they've been sent to these normalcy camps, right? Conversion places.
Well, what about Peter, who is AIDS, who has AIDS, and it's also the person who is espousing all of these ideas, right? I mean, so where does that come from? Is it this sense of self-loathing, or is it this sense to conform to these ideas because he has been so rejected by the outside society?
That too.
And then is the ultimate way of coping with that rejection of society what we see with Lester, who is also afflicted with AIDS, who has put himself in this entire bodysuit and acts in a very inhuman way? Is that the end point of all of this, is the question. And the answer, anyways, I think that this film is proposing is yes.
Yeah.
And it is,
well, because she literally ends up in a dome by herself in the end. You know what I mean? In isolation. You know what I mean? And so
it's just a slightly bigger version of what Lester is in with
exactly
that suit, right? And she looks inhuman in that moment. She has the sores and the bruises, and is not operating in a fashion that you would think a normal person would operate. And you see that with the speech that came shortly before, and she's not
ready to go back.
She's not acting like a person, but she's not acting like a person in a very different way than she was at the beginning of the film, where she also wasn't acting like a person.
Yeah.
So it's two different ways that she is operating, but they're both equally destructive, right? There is this environmental
destructive
illness.
to herself,
sure. Yeah. But is this environmental illness that we see evidence of it being a reality, where we see the exhaust fumes, where she has this total fit? She goes into the dry cleaner where they're cleaning everything with chemicals, and she has a seizure and has to go to the emergency room. And so it would appear that all of that is legitimate, but the fact that she deteriorates even further when she goes to this retreat that proposes to be this clean environment where she's going clear, which is a Scientology expression. I don't know that they knew that at the time.
I don't know if they did or they didn't.
But it's just very.
But maybe that is something you can think about now with it.
Certainly,
too.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't know where Scientology was in 1995, but
you can check your membership card.
So there is so I was in a fantasy football league one time, and we were talking about what would be the punishments for coming in last place. And the idea that I proposed was you have to make it to like level 3 of Scientology if you come in last place. And I thought that was a great idea. There's a Scientology Church of Scientology not that far from me, and I thought it would be just a fantastic.
Wait, you have to join?
Yeah, you have to join and get to like level 3.
Oh, what's level 3? Like cruise level?
I don't think it takes that much time. No, there's a bunch of levels. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would make people
like
stop
a Super Mario
when they had to start spending a lot of money.
Oh,
which is what you eventually have to do in Scientology. But
yeah, but then like if they do that, they gotta like that's really deep, because then you gotta
be
get your family
for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's an evil thing to do.
Okay, don't come in last.
Don't make that trade in week 4 that could cost you. Yeah. Oh my God, that's diabolical.
Anyways, it got turned down.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think I'm never joining a fantasy football team with you because he's like, I know the punishment. But no, I think about, well, also while you were talking, I was looking up Haynes is sort of like religious. He's very anti-religion. Surprise. And I think that that's very much the case here. I mean, I think of the sort of sing along when she's first getting there, and how kind of, I mean, just like how anyone would feel in that situation. It's just kind of like confused by it all and doesn't really think that it's, you can tell right then from those moments there that she thinks that something's up. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like
But she
the normal.
succumbs to it anyway.
She does, because she sees everyone's supposed happiness, and so
She sees people that look like her and have similar are saying that they used to have similar experiences to her, which look like her. Let's talk about almost all white people, which is certainly a theme in this film as well. You see that there's such an emphasis on this idea that she is the only one in the frame, and this is actually a sort of a theme of one of the essays I read in my book. I'll make sure that I shout out the author of this essay, but it's all about how it's all from Carol's point of view, to the point that all of the people who work for her in her house, who are largely minorities, are basically unseen and therefore unconsidered as humans by Carol. And that is sort of a symptom in its own way, but not just a symptom, but she's the one who's causing the disease. So it is this
that's a good way of,
fascinating contradiction where she is both a product of her environment, and she is also perpetuating this environment that she exists in, because she is in many ways the American ideal. She's this very attractive woman who has married a rich husband and has put together this immaculate home in the traditional sense. And because of that, it's something that she has always aspired to, but in the end, that is her undoing.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating film, a very thoughtful movie.
Well, it is really fascinating too, and this isn't trying to jump the gun here in the next couple of weeks, but it is a fascinating one too with Far From Heaven, and how he, the housewife is explored
in Dark Waters.
In Dark Waters,
I mean, it's
Carol,
very interesting. This is a turnkey.
This is like the housewife, and looking at that internally, because a lot of films, the housewife is a very throwaway character. You don't, maybe a couple lines here and there, and we see a lot from the perspective of men, and we never hear, we never get to see, we never get to understand and feel what they go through, right? And the societal pressures, Jay, of, because all of her friends, if you watch it throughout the film, in the Los Angeles bits, they've all got it figured out. They've all are doing these diets. They're all their schedules are prim and proper, and not everybody's going to be like that. So I also find it really interesting of being like, also too, this thing of the body saying that no, there's something more for you to do also as well too. There, this idea of like, you can be a modern woman as opposed to being, a traditional housewife, and her body rejecting that because she does want to do these things, and she does it with ease. And I find it really interesting that Haynes is saying, no, there's more than just picking out a couch and getting a party ready. You know what I mean?
And her most rebellious act is getting a new haircut.
Yes. But she also does it in such a way where she doesn't demand it. She's apologetic to a fault in that.
I don't want to be a burden.
I don't want to be a burden, and are you sure?
And that really is her ultimate downfall, is this suppression. She feels suppression, and she is accepting of the suppression. And the question is, should she be fighting against that suppression, or is the entire point that she lives in a society that is shaped in such a way that if she does resist against that suppression, she will be beaten down? Will that make her condition worse, or will that make her independent and sort of take her out of this realm that she has or that she has been put in and put herself in, that has been so bad for her? It's complex. It's not simple. This movie offers no easy answers.
No. And that's what I really love about it too, is its openness it's open bookness by the end, and,
Yeah.
and how that you and I can have this kind of conversation, Jay, and see things differently, even though we're not far off. You know what I mean? But see it in multitudes of ways, and that's what I Haynes kind of talked about a lot when I was doing the background for this, is that he's not going to give you the answers to this one. That's another thing that's very, people think, oh, that David Lynch is just weird because he's just like that. But what I love about David Lynch is he has multiple interpretations of his films, and he never gives people the answers. And when people ask him the answers, then he just he even he puts his foot down, and Haynes kind of does that here. And yeah, I mean, I think that I love you line, it felt very abrupt, felt very sexualized and videotaped, by the way it just kind of abruptly ends right there. I thought that was really kind of
sexualized and videotape really does reverberate through.
That's like a key. That is a key movie. Like, you just open up so many doors to so many filmmakers. But I thought, I still think that by the end it's her in there one last night before she goes home to test theory if any of this worked. If,
I think it is evidence that she is more shackled than she has ever been in her life.
That is fair.
That is my,
but she's got to test the theory. She's got
brain at work.
But also she takes one deep breath of air and she looks at that mirror, and we don't see if she goes and sleeps and how that night ends up turning out for her. And it could be disastrous, or we could see, I think that what would have done a disservice to this movie is if we see the next morning and see what happens, because then all the answers would be there for us right then in that moment. And
that would be a darn shame.
And that would be a damn shame. Not a darn shame, a damn shame. So you got your essay there? You want to?
Oh, yes. I did find the name of the essay. It is called All That Whiteness Allows, Femininity, Race, and an Empire in Safe, Carol, and Wonderstruck, from Danielle Bouchard and Jigna Desai. So check that one out. I'm sure everybody wrote that down as I said it.
Not that they can rewind this podcast to get it,
but check it out. It's very interesting and revelatory. So plenty of good writing on Safe, which we're lucky to have. I haven't read the Criterion essay, actually.
I haven't either. Yeah. Well, I don't own the Criterion, actually. Oh. Yeah. It was, I just, not to humble brag or anything, but I just put up like some new bookshelves. And
I did. I saw those bookshelves. You got a lot of blues.
Yeah. A lot of blues. And the best thing about that was I went on the shelf and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to pull Safe off the shelf because I have it. And then I went and I was like, oh no, I don't own this.
Oh, you have the Jason Statham one.
How much did you have to search initially to get to this one, because the Statham one was there on like Amazon or iTunes?
Well, I had to. And I had to search through my 4 Blu-ray copies of Safe.
Yeah. Well, and then you were like, oh, not Safe House, just Safe. That's the Safe House is the Denzel Washington, Ryan Reynolds film and everything.
I know. We really need to do a series on whoever directed Safe House.
I don't know, and I don't care. But no, I got to get this one. But Jay, do you have any final thoughts? Things that you want to talk about Safe before we start getting towards the end of this thing?
Oh man. Well, let me read you the LA. What Todd Haynes had to say about LA. He said, I looked at films that took the notion of LA as a futuristic space land where every trace of nature has been completely superseded by man really far. LA is like an airport. You never breathe real air. You're never in any real place. You're in a transitional carpeted hum zone, which is what I wanted to convey in Safe. But you know what? I would say he did pretty well. It does feel like this place that is eating away at you every second of the day. And that is where the horror of the film comes from. And I'll tell you a final thought I had, because this is something that I thought about as I was watching the movie. Julianne Moore, best actress of the last 30 years.
Well, this will be a conversation you have in a couple weeks. Cate Blanchett, best actress of the last 30 years.
Well, the thing about Cate Blanchett is, so Cate Blanchett is really interesting because she only really got started around 2000.
Yeah, like with what, like Elizabeth?
And she really tried and failed to be a movie star for about a decade.
Okay. I mean,
So
are you talking
Julianne
about
Moore
from
has
like
been
from 2000 to 2010?
something along those lines, yeah. Where she
In the
did
between where she won like an Oscar and she did like Lord
like
of the Rings and stuff like that.
well, how much credit do we give Cate Blanchett for Lord of the Rings?
I mean, she's part of it. She's a key figure in that movie.
But I think about, what was the Sam Raimi movie she was in?
Oh, Sam Raimi movie.
Yeah, she starred in Sam Raimi movie. I can't remember the title of it. It's not good, and it feels like a film that is trying to establish her as, a real
I'll look it up.
movie star. And Cate Blanchett just had this era, in my opinion, after Talented Mr. Ripley, where she popped so hard. And
The Gift.
The Gift, yes, that's it. It's bad.
It's not good.
And I just think she really came into her own a little later, whereas Julianne Moore has just been churning out good stuff for 30 years, right? She never really aspired to be, or maybe she aspired to be, but never really became a true movie star. But I feel like she was never forced down our throats to be a movie star. I mean,
I think she got to pick a lot of projects that she wanted to do, And I think she
sure
came up in
true.
She came up in an era though also too, Jay, where she didn't have to be in a superhero movie to counteract the independent movie she's
Cate
doing.
Blanchett has only been in one superhero movie.
Well,
and
I
Julianne
know.
Moore is still doing good stuff.
Well, what I'm saying is like she came up where, like, really she came into prominence what in like the 90s, right? The 90s was a big boom
Julianne
for
Moore?
Yeah.
Well, she started with, I guess, The Fugitive and My Beloved Shortcuts were two of her big break.
Working with Altman,
and
then she's working with like PTA, the Coens, Todd Haynes. She's working with like people that like
good crew.
That's a good crew, but it's also like in the 90s more so than now. There was the wave of independent cinema. The sort of the Miramax kind of,
That's true. There is an argument that her 2010s
are not great. You want to talk about Seventh Son? But also too,
this is tough.
But also she won an Oscar in the 2010s.
You can just say, isn't Meryl? I mean, it's a fair question.
I mean, yes, but then also too, she's got eras where it's not great. I mean, there's a lot of great actresses. The last 30 years.
I would like to bring to the table a nominee.
Oh, I feel like we should have more people to do this, but I'm curious of Jay's perspective and see if the audience is like his pick.
This is merely a nominee
for 30 years.
It's definitive. 30 years.
Okay.
And she's more in the 20, 25-ish, but still. Nicole Kidman.
Well, yeah.
She has made so many interesting movies. She has really refused. I mean, she was, of course, Aquaman's mom. We all know that. And we'll never forget it. It was a stirring turn, as I believe her name was Atlanta.
Or I'm not going to look that one up.
But it's just fascinating. She's done the Kubrick. She's done the Lars von Trier. She's done the Baz Luhrmann. It's Lanthimos. She's become attached to Sofia Coppola.
Jonathan
Glazer. Of course,
Glazer.
will never forget her performance as Lucille Ball in Being the Ricardos.
Oscar nominated.
I just think she's an interesting one to maybe throw in there.
Can I throw somebody in there?
She's got some lulls too.
Can I throw somebody in there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Last 30 years. I mean, it's kind of she's on the cusp, maybe 25. I'd say Tilda. Tilda's up there.
I'm sure there's a good argument.
She's in it. She's like everything. She's won an Oscar in that time period too. She's been in blockbusters. She's been in indie films.
Who can forget her turn as, what was her role in Doctor Strange?
What is it?
Looking here.
It's the great one?
The Knower. I don't know. Something like that.
Something like that.
I'm going to find it.
All you have to do is type in Doctor Strange. This is really wonderful.
I went to Avengers Endgame because it was closer to the top of her filmography on Letterboxd.
That's the ancient one. That's what it is.
Remember how good she is in Michael Clayton?
She is. I just watched Michael Clayton a couple weeks ago.
I need to rewatch it. Let's just do him next.
You want to do Tony Gilroy?
Let's do a double Gilroy series.
So we do like Michael Clayton,
the ancient one,
and then we do I said that, and then Duplicity, and then we do 2 seasons of Andor. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
I'm pumped for the Roman J. Israel Esquire episode.
Oh, that's right. He did do Roman J. Israel Esquire.
I am a Roman J. Israel Esquire stan.
Wasn't that movie like? If I can't remember,
good.
I haven't seen it in like a long time. But wasn't that movie like? No, wasn't that Dan? That's Dan, not Tony.
Well, I said double. Oh,
Gilroy. You want to do double Gilroy?
I'm doing double Gilroy.
We should if you're going to do a double, you do Ridley and Tony. You do the Scott brothers.
I mean, can't wait for our Velvet Buzzsaw episode.
Oh, well, you can't say too much. You're really just like going out on the edge. You know that like Eric's loves Julianne Moore and he loves Jake Gyllenhaal, and you're really just saying things now. The culture got Jake naked in Velvet Buzzsaw, and I think that's okay.
Who's a better director, Tony or Dan?
Gilroy?
Yeah. Tony hasn't directed that much stuff.
No, but he make Michael Clayton. That's better than anything they've all done collectively.
Probably true.
The movie's a masterpiece.
I mean, Roman J. Israel. Come on, though.
No. I'm not going to take that. No. You know the thing about Roman J. Israel Esquire and Michael Clayton. Funny enough, if you want to make that connection, is Denzel Washington was supposed to play Michael Clayton in that movie. And he read the script. And he said, "I really like this, but I don't think it's going to work." And so he turned it down.
He said, "I'm not sure I can play a guy named Michael."
And then he saw the movie and he told Tony Gilroy, "I get it now. I fucked up." And he said it was great and walked out. But yeah,
that's interesting because they have very different.
It would have been very different movie. Yeah, him and Clooney are totally different when it comes to that. But I think
I can envision.
I can see it, and it would be just as good.
It sounds worse.
I don't know. I think it'd be okay. I think it'd still be really good.
You know, the only thing I thought about was George Clooney's perfect delivery of "I am Shiva,
the god
of death."
Yeah,
and I know how Denzel. I can see in my mind Denzel playing that a lot bigger.
Yeah,
and it's not as good.
Also, too, I think the even better line is before that when he goes, "You're so fucked." Like that line is because it just
and you can hear Denzel saying that, and it's not as good.
He's yelling it.
He's yelling it. And I love Denzel yelling.
I love Denzel yelling. Oh my God.
Denzel's one of my all-time
favorite. I mean, like,
I don't know that he could have done a Michael Clayton. What's the closest thing he's done to Michael Clayton? Man on Fire?
I mean, he was a lawyer in Philadelphia. I think that was the other thing too. He played a lawyer before, and he didn't want to do the lawyer again. And he was like in Pelican Brief and stuff like that too. So he was like, I think I'm lawyered out. And that's why he didn't do it. But he said it was regret. It's just kind of like
we should do a Tony Scott.
That's what I said. I said we should do Tony Scott. It'd be great. By the way, do you know who directed? Speaking Denzel Washington, Safe House was directed by Daniel Espinosa.
Oh,
would you like me to tell you the 4 films Daniel Espinosa you would know him for?
Yeah.
So he did Safe House.
Of course, we all know that.
Child 44. You remember that movie?
Vaguely.
Tom Hardy.
Yes.
Joel Kinnaman, Gary Oldman.
Yes.
It was like based off a book. It was about like a disgraced member of the Russian military investigates a series of child murders during the Stalin Soviet Union era.
Sounds great.
Life. Remember Life?
Is that the one with Gyllenhaal?
It's the one with Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds and Rebecca
It's like
Ferguson.
the Alien ripoff.
Yeah, it's like the Alien ripoff.
Yeah, I heard that one's okay.
I heard it's not bad. I think was it the Kristen Stewart one, like where they're underwater?
Oh,
Timely, by the way. Timely, by the way.
What is that one? What is that one called? Just
under
is it called
underneath, underneath, something like that. Anyway, they both came out. They both came out like right around the same time. They were very, Deep Impact, Armageddon sort of thing. And then, your favorite movie last year, Morbius.
Oh, come on now. It was called Underwater.
It was called. All right, awesome.
Yeah, I never experienced Morbin time.
No, you never did. But anyway, Safe's a great movie.
Yeah, Safe is great.
And I love this. I loved it a lot.
What do you want to say? I took us in
you took us down our rabbit holes. That's what we said. Yeah. Tangents are going to be a part of this thing, folks. Just get used to it. I don't know. Well, one thing you did mention about the cinematography, he does kind of he's kind of looking for one. He's looking for a cinematographer, and this guy kind of goes into a blip, like just kind of disappears. And same thing happens in Velvet Goldmine. But then he finds Ed Lockman, who's been his steady guy from like Far From Heaven and Carol and I'm Not There.
So movie shot really well.
It is really I don't disagree. I'm not saying that it's not shot well. I'm just saying it's that you're saying that usually early on they find
he's
a guy that they and I think it a lot of this feels like the blocking and staging, especially like the way in which like in those circles, or the way that like the even like shots at the end of the film and how we see the final location of Moore in the mirror and stuff like that. It feels like that's all on the script.
Shot of her drinking the milk.
What?
The shot of her drinking the milk.
Yeah. I mean, it's all just like, it seems very strategic by the screenplay, and then the direction and everything. It feels very well realized. Feels like somebody that took 4 years, had an idea, and executed it to absolute perfection. It really does feel like that. Also, don't like I really truly want to know the health benefits of an all fruit diet. I've been thinking about that all week. Well,
it's like how now the all meat diet has become a thing.
Yeah, I was like thinking about that, like how like movies, like sometimes when you see them and they're like 30 years old and they're like tapping into things that like the dumb craze.
Well, look, there is totally an anorexia through line with this film.
Oh yeah, I mean that's
essentially all of these diets are. If you limit yourself to one thing, you won't feel like eating very often. So you'll consume less calories and you'll lose weight.
But also too,
all these things are.
But also too, you won't feel what? You won't feel normal. It is a suppression.
Sure.
And if you're already feeling that, it's not gonna help. And so,
but it's something that society is deemed normal.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Her in that chair when she has the breakdown at the party early on in the first act.
Yeah.
Some of the best acting I've seen in movie in a while, both in retrospective look backs and modern stuff.
She might be the greatest actress of the last 30 years.
She might
American
be
actress anyway.
Some would say.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Some might say that. Yeah. But no, it's just the again, her control. And yet it is, it's not a chaotic performance, but it's one that's very measured. And she did. It's also too, I love it when actors say
that of me.
You call me lady. But no, it I was thinking a lot about, I'm telling you.
Is it you think that of me?
Shame on you. Shame on all of you. I was thinking about that this entire movie. I was like, well, yeah, they just kind of ripped it, that's good old PTA. But no, I think that, I mean, she called her shot and she nailed it. That's great. And I think through that, there's a lot of trust that's built here. And then, we'll see that in a couple of weeks when we do Far From Heaven, where this movie I think runs is, and then that movie then sprints like or even flies. So
I'm excited.
Very excited about that for sure. But yeah, that's the Safe. It's a good movie. I don't know what to tell you.
Absolutely.
Well, Jay, before we get out of here, we're going to test your award season knowledge based off the film Safe that we just reviewed in the segment. For something we like to call an honor to get nominated. All right. Are you excited?
Insert music here.
Insert music. I don't think there'll be any music. We're just gonna maybe claps. I don't know. We'll figure it out. All right.
Let's embarrass me.
All right. So
I think I'm going to get this one right though, as far as how many Oscars this was nominated for.
Okay. So obviously it was nominated for no Oscars, but like
0.
Oh yes, but there was a big voting body, or I guess a big award show that it was a part of, which was the 1996 Independent Spirit Awards.
Sure.
So, can you tell me how many nominations it got?
Oh man, I'm not even sure what awards comprise the Independent Spirit Awards.
Well, you've seen the Indie Spirits.
No, I've not.
Just think of it as a normal award show.
All right, I'll say it got Best Picture.
That's Best Feature. That is correct.
I will say it got Director.
He did get into Best Director.
I'll say Cinematography.
No, unfortunately not.
What? Julianne Moore, Actress.
That's correct. You're looking for one more.
Screenplay.
Yes.
All right. Hey, not bad.
Not bad.
Can't believe I didn't get cinematography. That's weird.
Do you want to know what it was nominated against?
Sure. For picture, for feature,
it was Safe, Living in Oblivion, The Addiction, The Secret of Roan Inish. I'm gonna go with that. It lost to Leaving Las Vegas.
This movie is better than Leaving Las Vegas.
Leaving Las Vegas also won director.
Leaving Las Vegas just sweeping up the place.
Elizabeth
for actress too.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Shue is good in that movie. I'll give her that.
Screenplay, it lost to Christopher McQuarrie for The Usual Suspects.
Not terribly fond of The Usual Suspects.
And yeah, but then interesting. Nick Cage did not win Best Male Lead for the Indie Spirits that year for Leaving Las Vegas. He went on to win the Oscar. Lost to Sean Penn for Dead Man Walking. Del Toro won supporting actor for The Usual Suspects.
So I'm looking at the Oscars now. I'm going in.
I'm
trying to see
from that year, from 1996
to this year, which films nominated for Best Picture do I think were better than it? So the two I'm seeing here. So Braveheart won Best Picture. I think this movie's better than Braveheart.
Yes. Braveheart's not a good movie.
Apollo 13 and Babe are great. Crazy that Babe got nominated for Best Picture. I didn't know that.
You didn't know Babe got nominated for Best Picture?
No, but that rocks.
Oh, yeah. Movie rules. You like Babe? Do you like Pig in the City?
I love Babe. And Pig in the City is very good, but I think Babe 1 is like immaculate. Honestly,
is that comfort? Comfort food?
I would have given it to Babe. Babe is the best picture on this list.
Yeah. Babe rules.
I love Apollo 13 too, though.
Apollo 13 is good. It solves a lot.
Great dad fare.
That movie winning would solve a lot of problems. We wouldn't have A Beautiful Mind winning in a couple years later.
Good point. Good point. And then Mel
because
Gibson
Ron Howard doesn't even get
Apocalypto.
Yeah, because yeah. Well, what's his face? Ron Howard doesn't even get nominated for director here, which is kind of surprising.
That's kind of crazy because he directs the heck out of that movie.
Honestly, though, I gotta tell you, that's a stacked actress lineup.
Have you seen Il Postino?
I have not seen Il Postino.
Cool. Actress. Let's see. Oh man. Meryl should have won for Bridges.
Bridges in Madison County.
I don't know how many. I don't know. Oh, Sharon Stone in Casino, though.
Emma Thompson, Sense and Sensibility.
I would
Elizabeth
still go. I would
leaving Las
go
Vegas.
Meryl for Bridges in Madison County. How many Oscars does she have at this point?
She only has 2. This would have been her 3rd. Would have erased Iron Lady.
That would have been a huge win.
It would have been, but then Sarandon wouldn't have an Oscar.
Ah, good point.
It's kind of like Sarandon at the time, kind of. But then I guess you could give her for like Thelma and Louise, right? Or go back
and
give it to her for
this, right?
Well, yeah. So I guess you would have had to. She missed out on that, so this is the makeup.
But
for
this
that.
was her last Oscar nom.
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, this was her last chance. Yeah, because she was not. Yeah, she lost. 4 times before.
She could have gotten one for Cloud Atlas.
She's not in Cloud Atlas, is she?
She sure is.
Is she? Okay. I thought you were going to say she should have gotten one for Speed Racer.
Enchanted.
Oh, Enchanted. Okay. Would you have kicked
she
any?
Should have gotten one for Speed Racer. The whole cast of Speed Racer should have gotten an Oscar nomination.
We're learning a lot about Jay in the first episode. Jay, would you have who would you have replaced in this lineup for Julianne Moore?
So I haven't seen Sense and Sensibility, I must confess.
Wow. So you're going to say Emma Thompson?
That's the obvious answer. But if I have to exclude her,
I mean, it's
honestly
tough.
Okay. So I'll say this: Julianne Moore is better than Sharon Stone in Casino.
Yeah, I do like that nomination,
and I love Casino. I think Casino is my favorite Scorsese. I think it's official.
I think you could move Stone in supporting, couldn't you?
There's definitely an argument for that. Yes,
you can kick out one of the actors, kick out Joan Allen and Nixon, and then put Stone in there, and then Julianne Moore. We're solving problems. We're also probably creating a lot of problems because we're also rewriting Oscar history, and Eric's probably going to get mad at that.
The dominoes of all this.
Well, that's our first episode.
Wow.
We've done a lot of damage, especially towards the last 20 minutes of the show.
So much about the Oscars. You're going to nominate Batman Forever for cinematography and not this?
Not safe?
Batman Forever got a cinematography nomination.
Welcome to the Oscars, my friend.
If you're going to give it anything, maybe give it production design. Art direction.
Costumes?
Sure.
Sure.
Not cinematography.
Would Seal's song count?
Oh, man. A Little Princess cinematography. Great pick, Academy.
Jay, can you tell everyone out there where they can find you and all your work on the internet?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter, if it still exists, by the time this episode comes out, at Mr. J. Ledbetter. You can find my work at thegreatawardswatch.com. And look out. Here I come.
For sure. You can find all my work here at awardswatch.com. Playlist, Film Speak. I'm on on Twitter, I guess, with Jay until it burns down to the ground, as well as Instagram and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. Next week,
Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Jay Ledbetter, look for me there, I guess. I don't know. Mr. J. Ledbetter. I can't remember what my Letterboxd name is.
I think it's Mr. J. Ledbetter. I think that's what it is. We'll get it down by next time. But next episode, we'll be talking about the next film in our Todd.
It's just J. Ledbetter, you fool.
Haynes movie series. We'll be talking about Velvet Goldmine. So until then, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.